Snik Art, Laura and Nick, thank you very much indeed for joining me. What, 10 years, more than 10 years in the game now, I think?
And I think individually we've both started the creative process before that, but collectively as Snik Arts, 9-10 years together now.
Yeah.
And like, you've been around... But you've been around the world really, and your kind of trademark stencils, multi-layered, still doing everything by hand, despite some of them are just huge, and it's just fantastic work really. So I'm just really grateful that you're sparing the time to talk to me now. Really,
No, thank you.
And I mean, I suppose part of the benefit of lockdown in a way is that it's a bit easier to get hold of people, to be honest with you.
I think the interviews are quite fun as like a self-evaluating process as well. We're often like constantly busy and working on what's next rather than sitting down and looking what we have done and evaluating it. It's always quite enjoyable.
Yeah, we're not very good at taking a rest really these days.
So thank you, if anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, how's it been this year? Because I mean, I suppose the image in the background there is from the collab with Hera from Heracut in Berlin, and you've been in Miami, Norway, kind of all over. How's this year been, and how's the lockdown been in kind of what you had planned for this year and how it's panned out?
So last year obviously we had our solo show, which we worked for 18 months. And then the whole plan this year was obviously to get back on the road, go and paint some walls and go and travel around the world a little bit. Obviously, as everyone else knows, we don't need to go through the whole history of what's happened. Everyone knows what's going on. So everything's stopped, which is a little bit frustrating, but at the same time, we're healthy and we're well, so we can't complain. People are much worse off affected than us having to just stay here. So we're still grateful that we can still produce our artwork and still luckily, have good clients and still people are still purchasing even through hard times, isn't it?
100%. Like I was mentioning to you before, the difference now is we feel like we're working closely with people as opposed to bigger works in galleries. It's now kind of connecting to people what they want in their homes and print releases, etc. So it's quite fun to reach out to that market a little bit more.
Yeah.
And is it kind of a bit of a time of reflection as well, really, in terms of because it must be quite full on sometimes when you're traveling and, if you're constantly doing stuff, you don't always get the time to kind of fully appreciate it in a way.
I think it's been a great opportunity to reflect on the solo show. So that was one of the biggest things for us last year, a real moment of deciding that that's the current phase that we're in. I think Snik has developed over the past 9-10 years from kind of bold pieces with a white backgrounds, then to the pre-Raphaelite and a lot more colour injection. So we really wanted this year to do another photo shoot to start developing the next phase. And it has enabled us to lock down more of a movement on what we want to go to.
Yeah. Sometimes you've got to just smell the roses, essentially. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with focusing a little bit on the same body of work, but not too long. Like Laura was saying, we've got a bit of frustration because we're really ready to just keep the momentum going. But that's not to say we've not been planning other things and the next body of work, but at the same time, we've just been having to just change our approach slightly differently, which again is good. Sometimes you get a bit stuck in a rut, so maybe it is good to look at different ways to do your artwork, different ways to show your artwork, and different ways for it to be absorbed as such, if you know what I mean.
Like different mediums. So because we've been locked in the studio, we've experimented more with different brushes, different paint styles, and building up different layers, which we probably wouldn't have done because we would have just gone, right, what's next? It's, like Nick said, it's nice to just smell the roses.
What about that process with the kind of multi-layered? Just kind of talk me through how that kind of works in practice.
We do our own photo shoots now. This is something we've been doing for about 5 years. So originally we had to source the photographer who we got in Italy from an event, do all the mood boards, find the exact theme of what you were going with, which obviously this time was basing it on the pre-Raphaelite movement. Taking a little bit of influence from that, trying to evolve it, getting our source photography, doing the digitals, months and months of cutting, which anyone who does stencils knows can be a bit mind-numbing, but we actually quite enjoy it, really.
Yeah.
I've got no problem just sat cutting for hours. It's quite therapeutic in like a Zen way, really. And there is something nice about putting a whole body of work together in one run. We've never really done it like that. So 18 months just on one show was quite a learning curve. Quite a lot of arguments, quite a lot of late nights, quite a lot of alcohol, but you get there in the end, right?
And when we say arguments, we just mean disagreements to get it right.
Diplomatic.
Yeah, I was going to say that's, you know, being a kind of street art duo, some of the kind of pros and cons, what would you say on kind of either side of that?
Pros are there's 4 hands and 2 brains. No, it's great because
so a cons, 2 brains.
Yeah, 2 brains. The benefit is, you know, when you're looking at something and go, something's just not right, this is really doing my head in, and it's having that fresh input to look into it, because we both understand how we work. We both know what the main objective and the look of Snik is, so we guide each other well on that. Yeah. And it also means that potentially we're creating something that no one else is, because there is 2 brains, there's 2 ideas, having an input. Yeah. But really, the main big pro is the big walls. That's where the 2 of us really have a pro. Yeah. From the benefit, like you said, hand cutting all those stencils. It means we can get that out in time. It means we can paint bigger, faster, and harder with 2 people.
Yeah, 100%. And also to have the just general moral support, you know, the mental support when things get tough, when you're trying to work through a project, is having each other to push each other. We're quite good at just pushing each other all the time. We're always trying to evolve and keep things moving.
So what's a con?
What, with being a duo?
Yeah.
Arguing on a scissor lift.
Yeah.
Which anyone that's worked with on a lift or filmed this on a lift is very aware of.
You're like, you can't put that audio in. It's like, no, you can't.
That's why most of our videos on lifts doesn't have any audio.
Yeah. And I suppose traveling as well, you know, kind of going to far-flung places, it's got to be better than sort of by yourself as well.
Yeah. One thing we absolutely nailed together is eating really well and getting excited about going to different places around the world. And so whenever we travel somewhere, we really get to own and see the place we're at because of the people we get introduced to, and they kind of show us their hometown. So even if we were alone, you're never really alone, because the company or the production or the festival that you're working with kind of make you a family as well. You're
not going to these spots as a tourist, really, because you've always got like and everyone welcomes you like family in this scene, which I love. Yeah. You know, half the reason we love this is the people we meet and the places we get to go to. But we've met some people that we class as family now. Yeah. You know, we've got some really good friends.
Well, for example, look at Ilaria. So when we did Memory Urbana Festival in Italy, she was just photographing one wall that we did, because we did like a bit of a tour and did a couple of walls. And just from her photographing that one wall, we then met her boyfriend, went to a studio and went, do you know what, she's the type of photographer that can help us with a solo show. And we did the whole 3-day shoot with her. So you never know who you're going to meet, and you've got to embrace everybody just in case.
100%.
And so are you quite particular about where you paint and what event you paint, and the kind of, you know, the organisation? Do you kind of have conversations beforehand to work out, this kind of fits with where we're going, or maybe this isn't quite such a good fit? Or do you feel, generally speaking, there is that kind of welcoming kind of approach to most street art?
We are a little bit conscious of what events we do now. We've just done the Cheltenham Mural Festival, which was, you know, no sponsors for the event. It was a really grassroots festival. You know, the sort of festival that I started when I did the first Upfest in 2008, and that was the same. It was just some artists in a car park, no big money, you know, just boards on a wall. And these are the sort of events that people cut their teeth at. You know, people at those events next 10 years could become, you know, big on the scene. So they're really important events to be a part of, I think, because I like supporting these events that are about giving people a chance to, you know, maybe paint their first wall or travel to their first place. We're not so big on the big, you know, overly sponsored and promoted events, but really,
we'd never do branding.
I mean, really, we'll just paint a wall anyway. It doesn't have to be for an event. Most of the time we end up paying for the lifts for ourselves. We rarely get paid for our murals because we're not about that. We just like a good wall, really.
And like I said before, it pushes you. It makes you do something that you did on a canvas but big and still try and get it right. So it's a nice test for yourself.
We would like to start painting somewhere warm, because
Please.
for some reason we just seem to be painting in cold places.
If this could be a message to anybody, can we come painting in a warm country,
anybody
please?
got a warm country that we can paint in? Because we always just seem to be painting in the wind, and especially with stencils, but it's always windy or rainy or snowing or cold. So
yeah,
I mean, we still love whatever.
Oh God, yeah.
Whatever spot we get to, right?
100%. It breaks up the psyche then, doesn't it? So we kind of have a bit of once or twice a year we do a print release. We have specific galleries that we'll work with that year, and then it's having those 2 or 3 walls a year. It just breaks up the routine of it all. That's good.
And you mentioned, Cheltenham Festival a moment ago. That was a decent sized wall. That was a big wall, wasn't it? How was that experience? Because it was, as with most street art festivals, obviously a lot of being cancelled. It was a little bit touch and go. How was that kind of whole experience?
It was great. I mean, Andy, the guy who organised it, did an absolute stormer of managing to get it together. Managed to get about 90 artists. The guy had very little funding from councils and local authorities. Managed to get some great artists. Managed to get a lot of up and coming artists involved, and it was a real community spirit event. You had a lot of people from the local area really engaging.
It was weird that we had a fence around us, though.
You feel like you're in a pen, don't you? But I guess that's just health and safety these days.
Yeah.
But there's not been hardly any events in the UK this year. So actually, we didn't think we were going to paint one wall this year. So just to get one
Well,
done.
if you think about it, our solo show was October. If that had been like a few months later, not only save that wasn't written off because everything shut down, but people wouldn't have wanted to go to a very small underground crypt where everyone was bustled in together.
Breathing on each other.
Yeah. So we're incredibly lucky, and my heart really does feel for anybody that's been completely affected by this. Obviously, for support and everything going on, but for their careers and what they wanted to produce and what they're excited to produce.
It's a tricky time for arts and culture at the moment. Not even just for artists, but for musicians. I mean, this government seems hell-bent on trying to shut down every single club they can, and they just seem like they've got an agenda that is just really not supporting the arts as much as they could be. There's a lot of money for big business, but without art galleries, without music venues, especially grassroots venues, this country's going to become quite a shell of a place if we're not careful. So it's really important to support, arts and culture.
Such a difficult time, isn't it? Yeah, and like you said, especially for the smaller independents as well, who are kind of relying on real community support. And I suppose that's kind of one thing, which was going to be another question about why did you decide to hit the streets in the first place? What is it about street art in particular that that appeals?
Look, both of us started doing stuff on the street, as it were, when we were teenagers, and I think it is just that, like, you can't do it at home and you haven't got the studio, and you get art class once a week at school, so why not? And I think for me, Banksy was incredibly popular when I was a teenager, and it just kind of helped encourage, well, why don't you give it a go there? Me and Nick met in the very small cozy town of where we live, so it wasn't long before we worked out who's doing that. Oh, is that you? Yeah, it's me. And then from that's how we kind of started working together. It's not that much of a story.
No, but street art for me was a bit different to yours, because I just sort of enjoyed the fact that I did art at college and I hated it because I'd always have to do notebooks and annotation and stuff, and I couldn't get around to it. I'm not the best person for explaining my thoughts, so being able to just paint something on a wall and have that be your expression, and that's all that you don't have to answer to anyone for it. I quite like that. You've obviously got to be very careful with your choices on what you put up on walls. I'm not really. You've got to be careful about putting offensive things or things that you've got to bear in mind. Children are going to see it, and people that are a bit more modest would see it. So
yeah, we've often had to take that into the canvases that we do. That yes, we do female portraits, but at no point do we ever want to make our portraits sexy.
No, there's nothing sexualized.
There's nothing sexualized, and I think that's super important. That it makes it accessible. Like Nick was saying, through Paints and Walls, it wants to be accessible to everybody, and we do the same with our artwork.
And with say the street art, you've got that instant kind of connection with people you might see on the street. I suppose things have changed so much in the last 10 years as well with social media. Is that, you know, how much is that a blessing and how much is that a curse, do you think?
There's always a lot of fun watching people watch you paint and then watching people watch you finish the wall.
Yeah, and social media has really opened it up for us a lot. Like you say, it's been a platform for a lot of people that might not have been able to get their voice heard or be able to showcase. You know, you can paint a wall in anywhere and it can be seen around the world very quickly. I personally think it's part of the reason this movement has blown up so much, because of the internet and because of social media's influence. I'm not sure if it's becoming a little bit of a negative force these days. I'm not sure if people are becoming a little bit too hooked on social media, whether they need to put their stuff online just to get some validation the moment they paint it. But that's all personal choice for the artist and for whoever wants to, you know, whatever makes you happy, I guess, end of the day.
I suppose part of the reason I was asking is that, you know, and a couple of artists I've interviewed have kind of highlighted the fact that there can be a sort of, you know, a sexualization of whether it's, you know, the artists themselves or whether it's the kind of content itself that is maybe taking that route that's maybe not really, you know, so progressive, I guess, maybe.
I think it's difficult because at the end of the day, sex sells. And maybe if somebody's lacking in confidence in their own work or their own persona, that they go down that route because they know that, look, you can post something incredibly artistic and beautiful and it will get 80 likes. And then there is girls that will just post pictures of themselves and they get 12,000 likes. Yeah. So it is very, very difficult.
Social media is just a strange one. Like you were saying, you post a bit of artwork, don't get anything, and then you've got some famous dogs on the internet who've got 500,000 followers. So
I love how you went dogs.
Always ends up on dogs. Social media is just a very strange one in general. I think it's a very dangerous thing if you're not careful. You can get very absorbed in it.
Yeah.
We sometimes try and have a little bit of time away when possible, but at the same time, it's a very important tool for us to get our work out there, especially at the moment with the lack of shows and a lack of traveling and stuff. It's if anything, become more of an important tool just for people to stay in touch as well.
Yeah. I think your feedback as well is really important. Like,
yeah.
So say, for example, we post 5 different images. The one that we find the favorite often isn't the one with the most amount of likes. And that's quite a good way for us to navigate what people
It gives you a bit of a reality check, an ego check sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a bit like that with my photos. Sometimes I can really take a lot of care of a photo and think that this is the best photo I've taken in years, and like no one likes it, and then I'll post something just whatever.
Yeah. And do you know what? That happens exactly the same with artwork. So this has happened to both of us. You'll finish cutting a stencil and go, oh, I'm more excited. I want to see what it looks like. So you'll quickly blast it out in a bit of cardboard. Then you spend an hour painting it and go, cardboard one's better.
Yeah. Test sprays always come out better because you're not trying. Like the more you try and, you know, really focus on something. I personally have found it never works. When you don't care, that's when maybe you're a bit more natural. I don't know what does it, but it's always the test sprays that are better.
It's the flow state, I think they call that. This is.
I think that almost is like for anybody starting out, the biggest advice I could give is try not to give a shit, and you'll just naturally flow your real talent.
Solid advice. Just try not to give a shit.
It could be a trainer slogan. I don't know. Now, you know, we spoke about social media and, you know, digital platforms and things, but despite doing like these really intricate, multi-layered works, still, you know, you're cutting things by hand. Why do you stick to that, you know, that method, you know, as opposed to working, you know, on a, you know, a more automated digital?
It's just a personal choice for us, really. There's nothing wrong with using machines. There's nothing wrong with any method of producing art. There's no right or wrong. We just like maybe the downtime of cutting. It's quite a relaxing thing. You're into your audiobooks when you cut. Yeah. I just like to put music on and relax. It's quite a good way for me to sort of just struggle with general mental health and sometimes just be able to focus and relax and put yourself down and just find a level for a bit. There's no real reason why we stick to it, purely in the fact that it is what we do. And sometimes it's definitely not the best way to do it. It can take very, very long hours to get the same sort of piece that a machine could do very quickly. But I think we've just very, very much stuck in our ways in the fact that we love what we do.
We know it works.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
I think it can also give you a chance to change a piece before you get to it. So whilst you are cutting it, you probably think about how you're going to do those flowers when it comes to you painting it. Or perhaps if you go, actually the shadow's a bit too dark, I might thin it out a bit. You just really learn the face. You really learn the contours. So let alone when Nick's doing the kind of the graphic work to get it to that point, you then kind of have a second check as you're cutting it.
Yeah.
We just really know our pieces, I think.
Yeah.
And has there been a kind of either one piece that you thought like this is, you know, you're just so happy with it, you've nailed it, and it's kind of, or the experience of painting, you know, has been really great, maybe at a particular, you know, event?
We always love painting. Anything we paint, we really enjoy. There's a couple of pieces I cut last year, the big multi-layers for the solo. Yeah. I cut them in the studio because Laura still has the day job, so it was me that took those on board. They took me about 2.5 months each to cut each one. So you're talking like a week per layer easily. But it was sort of a personal challenge to sort of just see how much you can push yourself before you go absolutely mental, I think. So it was sort of, I don't know if it's a masochistic thing, I'm not sure which way I went with it, but you know, when you actually do paint the layers after putting that much time into the planning, they worked out a treat, so it works.
It's exciting because you can, like, for every layer that you paint, you go, oh my God, it's actually working. For me, the biggest one when you do that is on a wall, because it's so big and you can be rolling the stencil down and painting it bit by bit and being like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if we cut it right. And if you ever watch us paint or watch footage of us paint, look how quick we drop the stencil and leg it across the other side of the road. Because it is just that pure panic. Because even when you're at the wall, especially with halftones, you can't see if it's done right.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah.
You have to step about 20 meters back to be able to get the idea. I mean, most of the time, because we have to plan so much, there's no room for error. So by the time you're cutting the stencil, has to be right. It already is going to be right. So unless something really goes wrong on the wall, which we've had, you know, stencils dropping off, wind ripping things in half. The one behind you, the big museum that we did, was a huge challenge. So we're pretty ready for any problems these days.
But I guess that, I suppose, to summary, it's the reveal. That's what we're always the most proud of, because it shows from the photo shoot to the digital to the cutting to the painting, you know, you've done everything right at that step. And we do have a lot of steps, so it is very rewarding. Yeah.
I'm just kind of, I'm wondering if, and I'm just going to use a running analogy here, is that, like, for instance, if, you know, I do a bit of running, say if I'm training for a half marathon or a marathon, like, the process can be quite painful, but you know, you've kind of got this goal in mind and you're kind of working towards something, and then you get to the event, or for you, the sort of, you know, painting the mural, and it's it can be a fantastic experience. Afterwards, is there a bit of, you know, because I get, like, after an event, you get the initial kind of glow of doing the thing, and then it's like, oh no, we're not you know.
You get a bit of a decompression. I mean, like you say, the thing that does push us when we're cutting is that we're always so eager and keen to see it when it's painted. So it does, you know, even if it's, you know, it's 10 or 11 o'clock at night, freezing cold in the studio, and you're reaching that point of, like, I'm sick. Knowing that what you're aiming towards is what pushes us. But yeah, we get exactly the same. Yeah. When we finish pieces and you sit back, like, after our show, there's a good couple of months where we would just, you don't even know what to do with yourself. You know, you're sort of a bit, you're not, you know, it's why we keep busy, because we need targets to work to.
I think we will always have little things overlapping. So even if it's not a big canvas for a gallery, we'll have like a little bit of originals on paper to kind of tick along with. It's the same, like, I suppose in my eyes, I use it reference to gaming. I've always got 3 or 4 games on the go, because when you finish one, you want something to jump straight back into. Or if you're stuck on one, it's good to go to something else and then come back again.
Goose game.
Goose game.
And just to kind of talk about the painting, the mural behind me, which is so that was a collab with Hera from Herakoot for Urban Nation in Berlin, and it's I just love it. It's just a fantastic
Thank you.
But it sounds like quite a challenge.
I think for me, it was one of the biggest challenges we had. The first of all is because the timing that we had to prep for it, that was me and Nick sat right next to each other, and we both cut the same stencil at the same time, and we both started dreaming in lines. So you close your eyes and then just these staggered lines. Not only was that, but it was working at 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. every night, not really stopping, often working in the dark and having to scramble and call people to find lights to keep on going. You know, the shape of the building, we had the cherry picker and then there was trees in the way, and it was literally relentless. Yeah. But to sit back afterwards, walk the 20 meters across the road and have that reveal. And yeah, it was just huge.
It was 300 meters of hand cut stencils, which anyone that cuts stencils knows it's quite a lot. And like you're saying, the shape of the building wasn't the easiest. It was October again. We always seem to paint the cold. But to be asked to paint the outside of the Urban Nation Museum was such a big honour. We've got to big up Yasha for that, because it was Yasha that got us involved and gave us the, had the belief in us to get us that job. And then obviously Jasmine from Herakoot, to get her to do the lettering for us, which was a quote from Dr. Zeus that we picked out, which we thought just worked so well. It was a definite high point for us in our career so far.
Yeah, it was a nice little introduction to our ephemeral show as well, like you're saying with the Dr. Zeus, and everything slowly falling into a point of decay. And obviously there was a lot of flowers around the entrance. And the other benefit, having Hera as well, obviously she lives in Berlin, and at one point it got tagged. And she came along, blacked out the tag work, and then did a really cool mouse and kind of just kind of went, "Don't do this because we'll fix it."
So it kept evolving and developing. It was up for a year, which was great. So yeah, that was a definite nice time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Quite easy to photograph. so hard to work on, easy to photograph. So.
Well, we do the hard work for you.
Yeah, I benefited from your hard work, exactly. Your other collab with Nuno Viegas in Prenzlauer Berg as well, which is just stunning. Like I love that with the crown and yeah.
That was one of the first times we went really big with the halftones. Really and again, same problems when you're on the lift. Stencils sometimes don't line up. The weather was nice then, but Nuno finessed it with that crown. He blew it away with that bit, and that was a great. And the funny thing is that's been tagged now, but because it's so big,
they can't do the bottom.
They can only hit the bottom of it. So it's quite. That's still there.
I think that's up there in one of my favourite walls that we've done.
Yeah, it was a great. It was a great trip. Again, it was one of these trips where all of our friends are painting different walls in the city. That's for the Berlin Mural Fest, and very, very lucky and honoured to get invited to that, weren't we?
100%.
Yeah, love, and just it's just where it is as well in that neighbourhood. It's quite a nice, quiet area, so it just kind of it just works, doesn't it?
We were very aware of the area we were painting in, which was again why it had to be quite a delicate, serene piece. It's not very punchy, I'd say. It fits in quite nicely. It's just black and white. There's not too much going on. It sort of just blends in quite nicely with the area, I think.
And would you like to do any more collabs? Have you got any in the offing, or are you kind of?
We've got quite a few plans at the moment. Obviously, timing is the issue coming up to winter, but we're going to spend winter locked down. Can't say too much, but we've got some nice things in the pipeline, put it that way.
Okay, well.
Making use of our four hands. Making use of the four hands.
Yeah. Okay, right. Well, I look forward to that. Now, something I like to do is a few rapid fire questions. So we'll see. I've not tried it with an artist duo before, so we'll see how if you want to take it in turns, if you want to both.
Go Laura first, then maybe.
Okay, right. Okay, ready. I need to get some sound effects or something here. But first question: spray can or paintbrush?
Spray can.
Stencil or freehand?
Stencil.
Analog or digital?
Analog.
Art school or self-taught?
Self-taught.
Street art or graffiti?
Street art. Oh, I shouldn't have said that.
That was a very quick fire round. I like that. Do need to introduce a bell or a klaxon or something like that in there. Thank you for that. And I suppose one thing I like to do, and it can be a bit of an unfair question because it's like you always miss someone out. But if there was anyone, you know, who like artists you're into at the minute, or you know who you think people should be looking out for, maybe an emerging artist, or anyone really who you'd like to give a shout out to, you know.
Definitely shout out. Our man Nuno's got a big show coming up with Think Space in LA soon. So everyone needs to jump on that because that is going to be, he's been working on it for months and months. That's going to bang. Our mate Dilk's got a lot of projects in the pipeline. Some really interesting stuff coming up. Just all of our crew, all the Line Wolves crew for sure.
Ooh.
Yeah, always. But no, just really big up to anyone that's still managing to get their head through this as an artist, because it's a tricky time for everyone. So just sort of in general to anyone that's doing what they love and keeping it going and keeping your head straight, because it's not an easy time mentally for people.
No, I would always encourage artists to talk to other artists for advice and help as well. It's something that we do within our own group, but you never know. So occasionally someone will pop in and be like, oh, has anyone ever worked with this person before? And it can either be like, yeah, go for it, or maybe kind of go in with pencil marks instead of a pen mark, just in case. Just support each other, because we're not out to get each other. Everyone's here for each other.
Yeah, damn right.
Massively.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, perfect note to end on. So thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you. It was great to chat.